put these placards back up. They've fallen down. I'm just going to reinstate the placards. They're a bit floppy. Hello. Look at you all, you're beautiful. So, for those of you who may or may not know me, I'm Pandora Blake. I'm a feminist pornographer, sex worker and sexual liberties campaigner. And thank you. And I've organised this protest with Miles because not only is the Digital Economy Bill that's currently going through Parliament an outrageous attack on our sexual freedoms and personal privacy, but because the laws around sex, porn and obscenity in this country are massively overdue for review. And we need to demand a root and branch review of the Obscene Publications Act and the BBFC classification guidelines on which the Digital Economy Bill relies. So, I don't know if, So I run a spanking website, a feminist spanking website called dreamsorspanking.com, shameless plug. And it was unsuccessfully censored last year under similar legislation, the AVMS regulations, which some of you may have protested against in 2014 in this very spot at the face-sitting protest. Now, thankfully, after a lengthy ordeal, my appeal to Ofcom was successful and I was able to reopen the site. But a mere 4 weeks later, the Digital Economy Bill was presented to Parliament and I realised that my website was going to be criminalised all over again. Now, just to give you some context, I like spanking. I always have. I know, I mean it's great, right? What's not to like? It's queer, it's non-penetrative, you can do it with people you might not want to have sex with, it gets your circulation going and your endorphins flowing, it's fantastic, you get to roleplay and dress up, which I love. I've known that I like spanking since I was about 6 years old, when I first read Roald Dahl's autobiography about getting caned at boarding school, and my 6-year-old self was sort of under the duvet, getting very excited and thinking, oh my God, I wonder if this would ever happen to me. I knew instinctively that I should never tell anyone that I had this fantasy, that I should be ashamed of it, and I never mentioned it to anybody. And as I entered puberty, I started to wonder if I would ever find love and if I would ever find a partner who wanted to do this with me in real life. It wasn't until I got online in the 90s and found some free previews for online pornography, which I wasn't legally old enough to buy access to, that I realised there were other people in the world who had the same fantasy, and I wasn't the only kinky pervert on the planet. It made me realise that maybe I wasn't such a freak, that I didn't have to feel ashamed, and that I might find happiness and fulfilment after all. So this is one of the reasons I make pornography, is to help people who maybe are isolated in rural communities, who don't know that there might be a BDSM scene, to realise that they aren't alone and that there's nothing wrong with them. I don't think that as adults any of us deserve to be made to feel ashamed of our sexualities. You know, I'm bisexual, I fancy men and women and people in between, and I can't help that. And I can't help that I fantasise about BDSM and spanking either, it's just the way I am. And to criminalise people like me and people like you and tell us that we're obscene, that our sexualities are harmful to society, is shocking and it's absurd. So the Digital Economy Bill, as well as all of the privacy problems which Miles has enunciated so well, recriminalises me and my website Dreams of Spanking and the websites of countless other fetish and alternative and indie DIY alternative pornography producers in the UK, because it applies the BBFC classification guidelines for what content is legal to depict in porn to the internet. Now, the highest online porn, well, the highest pornography category is R18, and that's the category that it goes into if it's got real sex in it. And there's a long, long list of things that it's illegal to include or to classify as R18, including fisting, female ejaculation is what it's normally referred to, but you know, ejaculation from someone who owns a vulva, face-sitting, spanking that leaves marks, bondage if you've got both your wrists tied, your gagged, and you've got your ankles bound, and a whole host of other activities which are completely legal to perform in real life. So there's this discrepancy between what it's legal to do and what it's legal to depict, which is completely nonsensical and absolutely helps no one. And I find this particular list of banned activities particularly offensive as a vulva owner, as a woman, as a queer person, because I don't like being told that my orgasm is obscene. The way that my body naturally and authentically responds to pleasure is obscene and is too extreme to be depicted in porn because it might harm children. I don't like being told that if my lover puts their hand inside me, even if their hand's tiny, that we're doing, that this incredibly intimate act of sex is obscene, is violent, is harmful, is degrading. And I think that the reason these things are banned isn't some sort of conspiracy, it's just that our sex laws, our porn laws are massively out of date. Ultimately, these prohibitions derive from the Obscene Publications Act, a piece of legislation that was brought out in 1959, when it was still illegal to have gay sex. It is absolutely absurd that this legislation should still be controlling what we can do with our bodies, what we can do with our sexualities, and the kind of sex that we can fantasize having. So I think that we demand a joint committee reviewing our obscenity laws from scratch, going right back to the OPA. We demand a review of the classification guidelines that the BBFC used to control what content can and can't be depicted legally. And we want these guidelines brought up to date with current public opinion and with UK case law. I mean, my colleague Miles, who, the rock star lawyer over here, represented the defence in 2 trials in 2012, which were about content depicting things like anal fisting and male BDSM. And in both of those trials, a jury of the British public unanimously ruled that these acts were not obscene. Now, if that isn't an indication of what the British public currently thinks, then I don't know what is. And there's meant to be some sort of legal system on which the guidance is updated in the wake of this case law, and it hasn't been updated. So if a new piece of legislation like the Digital Economy Bill is going to be brought in March, then at the very least we need these guidelines to be reviewed before that happens, so that the law isn't any more out of date than it currently is. The bottom line is that none of us deserve to feel ashamed of our sexualities or of what our bodies naturally do when we have sex. None of us deserve to feel ashamed of what we fantasize about or the kind of sex we have, as long as it's consensual. Consensual adult sex should not be criminalised, and nor should any porn that depicts it. And I'm going to leave it there and hand over to our next speaker. Thank you very much.